All right. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Miss Jessie Stevens Taylor, and I'm so happy to meet y'all. Now, a lot of people think that I was born in Smithfield, but I wasn't. I moved here when I was 9 years old with my family. That was back in 1887. Now, 1887 is the same year that Smithfield changed its name to Southport. Now, does anyone know why we changed our name? Why is that?
Because you were hoping to get the port here.
Exactly. We were going to become the port of the South. Right. And so we changed our name because we thought that sounded really good. And so one of the reasons that we were going to become the port of the South is because we were going to bring a railroad here. Now, my daddy, he's from Chicago. He worked in the Chicago Board of Trade. And when he learned about Smithfield, he thought, oh, that's just the best place. What we can do is we can bring a railroad from Chicago all the way down to Tennessee and then to North Carolina and on out to the river. And from there, across the Atlantic over to England. And we can get coal and then bring that all the way back, the whole way. And so then we could become the port of the South. So he came down here and invested a lot of money and really worked hard trying to make that happen. But unfortunately, one thing led to another. We did get our railroad, but it took 25 years. And we never did become the port of the South. But that railroad, it came through, and now it came, when it did come, it came right along here, right alongside Burying Ground, and on down to the river. And that's where you can meet the ships. Now, if you see over there, there's a blue house. That's where the train station was. So you can kind of envision where people used to come for the train. That's not the building. The train station burned down during the war, but that's the location. So that happened in 1911. So a little bit before then, I was pondering because my daddy and my husband and my brother and Miss Kate Stewart, who you meet over there, they were all working real hard to bring the railroad here. And we thought, well, when it comes, there's going to be all these people that come with it. They're going to be coming to visit. They're going to be building homes. They're going to be bringing businesses. And I wondered, what could I do to help Southport get ready for that, you know? So what I did was I wanted to know what I could do and what other ladies could do. So I started a civic club for the ladies. And we didn't have a vote back then, but we still believed there were things that we could do to help. So we started studying what kind of things needed to be done in the city. And one of the things that jumped out at us right away that apparently the men hadn't thought of is that we needed trash barrels on the street. Because without them, people were just throwing their trash in the street like they were common. And so we got the businesses to put trash barrels in front of the businesses so people could throw their trash in the barrels. That was a big improvement. And then we cleaned up the cemetery, and we got people plant gardens in their houses, make things look nice. We painted street signs and put street signs out so people could find their way around who weren't from here. We sewed curtains for the elementary school, and we started the very first library in Southport. In the Garrison. Do y'all know where the Garrison is? Okay, so over on the side, that's where the first library was. Now, Miss Kate Stewart, we all donated some books, but Miss Kate Stewart, she donated 400 of her very own books for that library. And we in the Civic Club, we helped pay for the salary for the librarian to be open. I think she was open 2 afternoons a week. And then we did some political things, too. We all got together and we took a steamship ride up to Wilmington, where we could hear President Taft give a speech. Can you imagine hearing a president talk? We never heard such a thing. And then we came down here and we met with the mayor and the alderman, and we told them what our vision was for the city. So we tried to do a lot for the city. Now, are any of you members of the Southport Women's Club? Or you know anybody who's part of Southport Women's Club? Okay, well, you might want to think about joining, because that civic club is the one that I started, and it just got renamed to the Southport Women's Club after about 10 years. But that's the same one, started in 1909, and it's still going today, and they're still doing wonderful things for Southport. So the other thing that people know me for is for the weather. Now, have y'all heard of the National Weather Service? You heard of that? Okay, well now when that started, the government, they needed information about the weather all across the country. And the way they got that was by asking volunteers. So I was one of those volunteers. And so every day I'd make notice of what the temperature was, what the wind was, how much rain we got, and then I would send that up to Washington, D.C. along with all the other volunteers, and they put that all together. They called it data. And so they kept track of that. And then the other thing was my daddy, he heard about how some coastal towns had big towers, weather towers, and that they could use to help convey what the weather was going to be to the people that lived around there. So my daddy talked to some people in Congress, and he got one for us. And they brought it down. It was good Pennsylvania steel. And they brought it down, all the way down here to ship. And my daddy had it erected in the Garrison Lodge. Now, I don't know, unfortunately, it's not standing any longer, but it was standing up until just a couple of years ago. So it stood there almost 120 years. That's how good that steel was. And so it stood there. Now, what happened with that tower, what we would do was we would raise flags, and that would tell people what the weather was going to be. Now, I have a flag here. This is not the flag that I used when I was putting the flags up on the weather tower. Those were great big. I just can't lift them anymore, but I did for a long, long time. They were great big flags, and if you want to see one, there's one hanging over in the Maritime Museum right now. Can you imagine my flag's in the Maritime Museum? So it looked like this. Now, does anybody know, if you see this flag hanging from the weather tower like this, do you know what that means? Say what? Hang on. That's one thing. What else? Anybody else know what it means? Hurricane. Well, one flag means there's a storm coming. There's a storm coming, so you should look out. But now, if there's two flags, one right on top of the other, look just like this, then what does it mean? Hurricane, right? Hurricane. So that's when you want to skedaddle out of there and get to safety, right? So that's what we did. My daddy did it for a long time, for about 10 years or so. Then he started getting tired, and so then I took over and I did it for a really long time. Now, it all kind of blends together for me. All those storms, there were so many storms in so many years and so many decades that it gets all confused for me. But then in 1953, something happened that helps me keep it straight, a little more straight in my head what all those storms were. Do you know what happened in 1953? Oh, hey, not quite, not quite. Anybody ideas about 1953? That's when they started naming the storms. So before then it was just this storm, that storm, another storm. And, but then they started naming them, and so that made it easier to keep it straight. Of course, you might notice they started naming them all after the ladies. Somebody had a sense of humor. So the year after that, 1954, well, that's when Hazel happened, right? Hazel. Now, have y'all heard of Hazel? That was the worst storm to hit North Carolina in the entire 20th century. It's what they called a Category 4. And it made land right here at Southport, right here between here and Calabash. Now, the night before the storm, I mean, the weather looked fine. You wouldn't know that a storm was coming. But I knew because I was on the phone with people down in Florida and South Carolina and Georgia all night long. I was on the phone with people, and we were trying to keep track of that storm the best we could. And we'd say, "Have you seen the storm? Has the storm come through to you? Where's it at?" And then we were tracking it as it moved up the coast. But then, one point during the night, we lost it. Suddenly, there was no storm. Nobody had seen it. We're like, "Where's Hazel? What happened to Hazel?" And we were hoping that it had gone out to sea. Then that morning, early that morning, barometer started dropping. It fell real fast, and I knew what that meant. And I started calling people on the phone, everybody I could think of that had the shrimp houses along the water. Dan Harrelson had a grocery store right on the water, people that lived on Bay Street. And I called them and I said, "There's a storm coming. You need to go, you need to get out, you need to get your boats up the river, you need to get your family out of there." And I think some of them thought I was crazy, but they decided to humor me. And they figured they'd tease me later if a storm didn't come through. So they all got out. And, you know, that storm did hit. It did hit. And it wiped out all the shrimp houses that were along the water. And it flooded everything. And, you know, it picked up all those boats that were along the water, picked them up, and it dropped them on Moore Street, that far from the river. So about that time, there was construction going on over, but the military was doing some construction over near Sunny Point, and so they had cranes. So they brought those cranes over here to Southport, and they picked up those boats and they put them back in the water. I don't know what we would have done if they hadn't been here to do that. And you know, it was a terrible storm. In Brunswick County, there were 19 people who passed away, perished in that storm. But you know, not a single one was from Southport. I was very pleased about that. So not too long after that, well, I got an invitation from the federal government, the National Weather Service, and they sent me an invitation. They invited me to Washington, D.C. to a luncheon at the Watergate Hotel. It was quite fancy. This is what I wore. And so they invited me there, and when I was there, they gave me a medal. And the medal was for being the longest serving Weather Service volunteer for the whole National Weather Service. I've been serving for more than 50 years. I'm so proud. And if you want to see that medal, you can see it. It's over in the Maritime Museum, and right next to my flag, they've got my medal. So you can see both of those over there if you'd like to go over there someday. But I sure have enjoyed talking to all of you. I know I've been just talking your ear off, and I'm so sorry. I'd love to hear your stories sometime. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But otherwise, I know that those are the people you want to talk to. So you all enjoy your day in the cemetery. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.